Today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about if we get around. Remember, we don't always get around to it. We like improvisation here. We just like sometimes you ride the wave of a really good conversation, and you don't want to get around to other things because you're in a zone. But we might talk a little bit about balancing the warrior and poet balance, right? A lot of us here, we're ultra competitive. We want to win. We're so passionate about jiu-jitsu, and sometimes where's that line between competitive and cooperative, that yin, that yang, that warrior poetry balance? We'll talk a little bit about that because Robert Drysdale, who gave me my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, he and I had an exchange. It was a private text message exchange the last couple of days. Robert, I love him. He said, I'm going to make it public. He liked it. He made it public. So some of the things that he and I talked about in that private conversation, which has since been made public, we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Noah. You're holed up in New York City. You're doing all kinds of whatever, taxing, accountant work, whatever you do, whatever Jedi work you do there. You're working 12-hour days, 15-hour days. There's a lot of guilt that happens when we're injured, when we're holed up in a cave and we're working and we're missing time on the mats, right? And we don't get to legally choke people and legally have that bond and that fraternity. We're going to talk about that guilt. We're going to talk about missing out on training so much and what that's like and how you cope with it. If we get around to it, we'll talk about our friend Mikey Musumeci, probably the best expression of American Jiu-Jitsu in the gi ever. And, he's now, he and his coach, who's also a multi-time world champion, Caltera, on flow grappling, they have a $10,000 challenge to anybody that can beat Mikey at any weight, any heavyweight, I guess. And if we have time today, we'll explore that. But first things first, we were talking a little bit off camera. We like improv here at Everyman BJJ. I was telling Noah and Jordan, because we're in our infancy. This is episode 8 today, guys, right? So I remember Joe Rogan saying at one point, sometimes I'm paraphrasing, but he kind of cringes when he watches the early episodes of his podcast because they're so bad and they're rough around the edges so much. It's like a lot of us watching when you're a white belt, right? If you were to watch videotape of your first day or your first week or your first months in jiu-jitsu, and you'd be like, wow, look at how bad I was. Look at these white belt mistakes I was making, and on down the line. So we are a work in progress. We're going to get it right. And as I was telling you, Noah, if we got 10 minutes of gold, this is a lesson for everybody out there, because I've been in the media business for 26, 27 years now, in newspapers and TV and professional sports. I know a thing or two about media. I went to a college, University of Maryland, that has one of the best schools of journalism decade after decade in this country. So I know a thing or two about media. And as I was saying to you guys, the gold of what we're doing right now, if we only struck 10 minutes of really good highlight videos, 10 minutes of really good dialogue between us, if we only achieve that, we would be good to go. If we shot 100 episodes, 1,000 episodes, we'll be good to go, because it's just like the UFC. The gold is that library, right? There's a lot of, let me tell everybody a secret about fighting here: boxing, MMA, UFC. The truth is this: even if you're a diehard fight fan, okay, most fights are boring. Most fights are boring. Even if you love jiu-jitsu, if you were to go to a jiu-jitsu tournament and you were to sit there for 10 hours and watch every jiu-jitsu match you could in 10 hours, a lot of the matches are not interesting. I don't care how much you love jiu-jitsu. That's why, thank God, there's 10 or 12 mats, and so you can pick one where maybe something interesting is going on. The secret of the fight sports is those of us that love it, those of us that are addicted, it's not that every fight is interesting. Most of them aren't. It's the 15 or 20% of fights that are interesting that keep you addicted, like Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. That fight's getting ready to come up here in Las Vegas this week. Big fight. If you saw the first one where Tyson Fury got basically knocked out cold and gets up from the grave, right? Raises a hand from the grave and comes back and wins. That's what keeps us addicted when you see things like that. And one other final thought on that. So just always remember that. Anything over 10 minutes of great video for Noah and Jordan and I is gravy. We'll be very lucky men and very lucky media producers if we can get that. And along those same lines, I would say this: wrap your brain around this along the same lines. Anybody out there who's going to do a podcast, who's going to produce any kind of media, most of what you do, a lot of what you do is not going to be really good, right? You have to go through the trash to get the treasure. And a great metaphor for that is in the music industry. Think about this. if we were here and Noah and Jordan and myself formed a trio, right? I don't know how you guys sing, but let's say we formed trio. We got Noah on the drums, whatever. Jordan looks like he's a rocker or whatever. So Jordan on the piano or the guitar, whatever. So we got a trio going. I'll do some vocals because I don't play any instruments. But we got a trio. If we could somehow produce only 5 good songs a year, so one good song, one catchy song every 70 days, we would be. And if we did that for 5 or 6 years, the Beatles' legacy is only like, I think, 4 years. The Beatles were a meteor, like boom, 4 years, and then that's it. They're living off of the replays of that song, right? It's like a 4-year boom, not a one-hit wonder, but a 4 years wonder. So if you went gangbusters and you went one really good song every 70 days, 5 hit songs a year for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, you'd be a superstar if you had the right marketing and the right people behind you.
Yeah.
That sort of metaphor is for what you do in the content space. If you're a content producer, if you're making your own podcast, just like a lot of things. I mean, a lot of your wins, Jordan, you're going to go on, you're going to compete at bigger and bigger tournaments. A lot of times it's those little ho-hum tournaments where nobody remembers. Most people don't remember your match there or whatever, but those are there might be 10 seconds of every Jordan Worth match that's like, wow, right? And then there might be, if I watched one of your matches, there might be 4 minutes where I'm like, yeah, all right, no. And there might be 10. If you just had 10 seconds of wow in every Jordan Worth match, and we put that together over the course of like 100 matches, your highlight reel would blow everybody away.
Super
it would
sick,
be like,
yeah.
oh my goodness.
Well, Jordan has.
Anyway, so go ahead.
I was going to say Jordan has quite a highlight reel forming. Jordan, what is your Instagram page that you have all these different competition?
My Instagram handle is Jordan Wears No Gi. That's all one word. Jordan Wears No Gi.
Okay. What made you think of that handle itself? Or I don't know if you call it a handle, Instagram.
So I didn't even want to get an Instagram, dude. I'm old school, man. I had MySpace, and back in the day when I had a MySpace, back in like 2009, 2008, 2010, MySpace was like really, really popular for a lot of kids. At least this is how my perception of it at the time was. MySpace was really, really popular for like teenagers, young adults, and kids. And then like Facebook was kind of like the more professional thing that like the older people kind of used, like keep track of family members and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I definitely did not want to get a Facebook. And then MySpace got taken away. And then I was like, oh, what do I do now? Like, oh man. And so I got a Facebook, and I didn't want to get a Facebook, and I felt forced to get a Facebook. So there was nothing else better. So I got the Facebook. And then I was training Jiu Jitsu, and then I needed to get a sponsor, and I kept asking people, like, man, I kept on looking around, like, seeing all these people, and I would roll with them, and I would mess them up. I'm not going to name any names, but I would roll with these people, and I would destroy these people, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm a sponsored athlete under this, and this person.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, what? You're sponsored? What do you mean you're sponsored? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, dude, I'm sponsored, man. I have this big of a following on Instagram. I've got, like, 10,000 followers. And I'd be like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, and then I didn't have an Instagram. And when I signed up at 10th Planet Las Vegas, they told me pretty much, like, you got to get an Instagram, dude. Like, if you want to get sponsors, you have to get an Instagram. That's how you get sponsors. And so I got an Instagram, and once I signed up at 10th Planet Las Vegas, and that's why I got an Instagram, and I needed a name. And I was training Jiu Jitsu, and it was going to be a Jiu Jitsu Instagram, and I just thought of it on the spot. It just came to me. It happened to be gold.
It really just happened to be gold.
Mm-hmm. I just thought of it. I came to it in like a minute. I went to sign up for Instagram, and I looked at the username bar, and I was like, Jordan Wears No Gi. Bam.
Well, I'm going to see
super quickly. No thought. Just came out.
Well, you've got 22 as of today. 2,200, a little bit over 2,200 followers,
and still no sponsors.
Still no sponsors. Well, maybe this podcast might change that at some point. Frank, what is you have an Instagram page as well too, don't you?
Yeah, it's Frank_Forza, Forza.
And why did you come up with Forza? Because when I first met you, you had a different last name. Did you want to go into that?
I don't want to go into that too much, but like a lot of people, it's not uncommon for people to change their name. I don't see why it should be relegated to celebrities. I don't think it should be relegated. I think people have a right to decide what they want to be called. I mean, how many people out there maybe have a name they don't like and they're stuck with that name, right? You have people out there that have a name and people develop nicknames for them that they don't like, but those nicknames stick.
Yeah.
And what you name someone, what you call someone is very important. It's very important on a vibrational level. To me, it's very important on a spiritual level. To me, it's very important on a meaning level, on a destiny level. So, you know, I think that as somebody who's been sort of, I think of myself as sort of a philosopher poet. I don't like labels because I think labels, you know, Wayne Dyer used to say, if you label me, you negate me. We tend to minimize and marginalize a lot of people by labeling them and saying, you know, Jordan is this, Noah is this, and we want to put you in our box. And when we hit new levels spiritually, we tend to not like labels. But if I was to put any one label, I would say a philosopher poet. And so I'm somebody who thinks a lot. I think deeply. And so I put a lot of thought into adding that. I did not change my name, by the way. I merely added a name.
Gotcha. I sorry for the confusion.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you used to just be Frank the Tank. Now you're Frank the Organic Tank. You added organic.
It became organic.
That was given to me by the Hawaiians, by the way. But anyway, so I still have the name. You know, Carreri was my birth name, and I still have the name Carreri, but we just legally added Forza a few years ago, and I think that fits for this new chapter. For me, I mean, Buddha's name wasn't Buddha, by the way. I mean, right? Everybody says Buddha. Yeah, I believe his first name was Siddhartha, whatever. Buddha's first name wasn't Buddha, right? So I mean, you can choose. You really can. This is America. This is the United States of America. I'm not running from the law. I'm not running from anybody, right? I'm not running from creditors. That's not the motivation. I'm not trying to be famous and be some big celebrity and have that wasn't it. It was very much for me, just like a lot of the people in the yoga community do it, or in some of the spiritual communities. What do? I mean, a lot of them, they take upon new names. And so when you think of, a lot of people don't think of this. I want to make one other point. When you think of a rebirth, every day you wake up, to me is a rebirth. Every day you are born anew. Every day is a white canvas, is a whiteboard for you and your life, for my life. And that's how I look at it. And there are seasons of our life that are rebirth where you signify, hey, the new day is dawn. I'm letting go of the past. And I'm going to live in my imagination. I'm going to live in the now. I'm going to own today. I'm going to win today. And so for me, that was very symbolically, that name change was a cleanse. It was a rebirth. And that's what it was for me. But again, should everybody do that? No. Some people got lucky. Their parents, you know, loved them at birth and did a wonderful job and gave them great names. And if you're doing great, then you don't need that. But
if your name is Gracie, don't change it.
Yeah. That's not a problem. It's a very graceful name, right? It's a very graceful, rich, traditional name. So it's just you and your situation. Everybody is responsible for their own happiness, Noah and Jordan. You know, you guys know that. It's what's going to work for you. I felt deep in my spirit. I felt something, you know, I felt the name come to me spiritually from a deep level. I felt the alarm system. I just felt that. And I went with it, and I'm happy I did. I'll say this, if you ever do add to your name, or if you change your name, I'll say this. At first, it's going to be a little awkward. Like for the first couple of weeks or months, like I got a lot of buddies that call me Carreri. They love Carreri, and Carreri's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're like Carreri, that's fine. And then you got people that are Forza. So at first it kind of freaks you out because you've never heard anybody say Forza. You know, you've never heard anybody say that. And it takes a while to, just like anything in your life, when you start a new chapter, when you start Jiu Jitsu for the first time, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be a little weird. You're going to have days where you're like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here? This isn't a good idea. You know, a lot of times life is 100 steps back to take 1,000 forward. So even when you change your name, there's going to be a little people are going to bring up like what you brought up sometimes, or your friends are going to be like, what is Frank on Facebook now as Forza? What is this, right? You're going to get that a lot, and you got to ride through that. You got to be consistent and work through that. Now in my mind, I'm still Carreri, but I'm Carreri Forza, and it's worked wonderfully for me, I think. So
yeah, it's interesting.
Tell me what you thought. Give me your perspective of me when you see Forza. You're like, is this a pseudonym or something? Is this his writer name? What were you thinking? I guess.
Who are you asking? Me?
Either one.
That's both of us, I think.
Oh, okay. That's
I'll go first.
Okay. Go ahead, because
when I first seen it, I seen it on Facebook, and I was super confused, to be honest. I was like, Frank Forza, what is this guy doing? This guy's going all crazy into the health stuff, man. This guy's trying to be. I thought you were trying to be like a super healthy, famous guy. I was like, oh man, this guy's going all into it. And then I realized that it was like your actual name change. After probably like a couple months in, I realized that it was actually changing your name. And then I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. That actually like flows off the tongue pretty nice. That actually sounds pretty cool. Makes him sound like, I know this wasn't what you were going for, but it makes you sound like a famous person. It makes you sound like almost like celebrity-esque. It's like it does sound super cool. I think it was a good fit.
But you got to say, Jordan, I'm going to ask you, does that name fit me though? You know me.
That's what I said.
Does that name fit?
It does fit you. It fits you very well. And I feel like it honestly almost fits you better than Carreri, because I don't know, Frank Forza, especially your whole health thing that you've been doing lately online with Instagram and stuff like that. I just feel like Frank Forza is a good fit for you, man. I just feel like it really, and especially now, I don't even really question it anymore. Like now that he brought that up and you were bringing up Carreri, in the back of my head, I still remember it. But now you're not even really Frank Carreri.
Yeah.
You're Frank Forza.
Jordan only knows me as Frank Forza now, Noah. So
yep.
What was your take, Noah? Did you think I was losing it, going crazy?
Not at all. What I thought was it was knowing your backstory somewhat. I recognize it as you were growing out of your past, and you were rebranding your own self. Which when you were talking a moment ago about having to get accustomed to being called a different name, that's what our CIA operatives go through every time when they have to change their working when they're on their cover names, and they do that. From what I understand, they do that over time as well. So they don't take on a new name suddenly. It's more of a drift. Oh, and it just is an interesting side. Each one of our names just have first and last name have 3 syllables. So I think that's pretty tight. If you have your Worth, Forza, Green, very.
I think about this though. I want to say this. Your name is Green, and you work with money. I mean, come on, that is like so serendipitous. That's perfect.
I've thought about that
money
before.
and numbers. Come on, how could you have done anything else? Perfect symbolism on every level. It's like, what are the odds your name could be Green, and let's say you worked in a junkyard or something, but as opposed to money? Come on, perfect.
Well, I could go into Green Energy,
Green, there you go. You could take over. You could corner the market with that name. It's so authentic. Like nobody can beat you in the Go Green movement with that last name, because you're not just saying Go Green. You are you've literally gone green.
Imagine this.
Literally
green your whole life.
Wow.
That could be your slogan. Your
wow.
Slogan could be green
Hold
your
on.
whole life.
Let's bring this back. I was thinking one day what I want to do is I actually want to get a custom made all green gi, like forest green gi with
green on green.
That's right, green on green, green on green on green. Just
and if you get a money, and your symbol should be like a money dollar sign. It'd be green on green on green. That could be your whole shtick.
Yeah, but I was thinking because I also like the moniker. Let me talk a little bit about as far as the relationship with my name, because growing up in high school, I was bashful, shy, awkward, just a mess. I think we all were. And Don Pantoja was my band director. I was in band. I was not in sports. And in a room, in a band room where there's about 100 people in there, he would do the roll call, and he would call out my name, Noah, because that's what's printed on the attendance sheet. But as a child, my mother had used my middle name, a knockoff of my middle name, and called me Robbie. Until one day my grandmother said, "You're too old for Robbie. Go by Noah," which is your grandfather's name. And but to be called Noah in public, I was so bashful. I was like, this isn't. I'm embarrassed, and I didn't understand that. But after, I think after my grandmother told me you're too old to be called Robbie, I had to go through an adjustment period as well, and that was the time that I wasn't living at home anymore. There's I don't want to go into that, but that's when I had signed up to go in the Marine Corps, and so I signed up, going as Noah, and
Noah.
And I had to get used to this, like, oh crap, I'm gonna have to live with this name. But when I got out, eventually later on, when I went into auditing and that kind of area, I started, I was like kind of tough on clients a little bit, just, in auditing, just going after the information quite enthusiastically. And so one of my coworkers said, "Well, you're kind of mean, so I'm going to call you Big Mean Green." And it turned it as like a tongue-in-cheek Big Mean Green.
Ever. What is he talking about?
Well, professionally, if I'm on an audit, and I was, for a long time I did financial due diligence, which is, you've got to put chief financial officers and their team, you have to call them to account for things, like when they don't say adherence to their underwriting policies or the collection policies, or they're trying to push the envelope on financing transactions. I relish the work of going after them. I do. It's just, it's I know it's just I am passionate about that. I love going after them. And
well, you're built like a bulldog. It makes sense for you to go after people.
I love it. Yeah, I should.
I want to backtrack for 1 second though. You mentioned that you were in the band. That's a revelation. I didn't know that when you were younger.
Oh my!
And I just want to make one remark. You know what the problem with being in the band is in high school? Noah, you want to know what the problem is? The problem is that you're not allowed to legally choke anybody in the band. That's the problem. You can't legally choke anybody in the band. But Jiu Jitsu, you can do that. But so think about this. Even the Rock, okay? If you ask most people, the Rock, right? The Rock has got like 20 million Twitter followers out there. I mean, he's huge. And The Rock, I mean, if you just said his regular name, every once in a while, if you read a media story about The Rock, they have his name. Now, if I just ask you, you don't have 10 seconds to think about it. The Rock's first name is what? Noah Green.
Dwayne.
What's first and last name?
I don't know. Dwayne Johnson.
Okay, there you go. That's pretty good.
I almost said Dwayne Reed.
If you see a picture of him, you don't think Dwayne Johnson, right? You just think
The Rock.
You don't even think Rock. You think The Rock.
Oh,
right?
Okay. All right. Yeah.
You don't even think. So, and again, was his birth name The Rock? I mean, that's a whole persona. It's a whole identity. It fits him though, right? It's like, wow, this is what. If he was 100 pounds, The Rock would be a joke, right? It's not a joke. It's like the guy looks like The Rock. I mean, it fits. All that's important is that it fits. By the way, when I want to say this is like an all. I'm not going to say about that, but you two guys have great names. Jordan's such a strong.
It's solid.
And then Worth. I always say know your worth. I always tell Jordan as a young fighter to change his nickname to Know Your Worth, but it hasn't grown on him wherever. But Know Your Worth or something like that, right?
You're going to have to take that Instagram handle.
But then you got Noah. Even the first name Noah, to me, biblical name. But to me, Noah evokes, when you hear it, when it hits the brain, it evokes like this wise person who knows things. Noah, he knows a lot.
Noah. Oh, that's where you get that from.
So when I see Noah Green, I think he Noah a lot about green.
I think he Noah a lot about green.
Oh my gosh.
But he does look like a bulldog a little bit.
Would be correct.
Yeah. Well, I got to work. Just let me say, I was rolling with a white belt this week, and huh?
I said, did he kick you in the face?
He'd need me in the mouth.
It's a major problem.
Did you do your due diligence?
No, I never met this kid before, but which is common.
It's got to do your diligence.
Henzo's man. You don't, Henzo's. It's just you're playing Russian roulette with the white belts. And I was doing my thing. I've been on this long-term study of just continuing to master my defenses, and not play a heavy, I guess you call it talk game, where you're offensive. And, for me, I'm still wanting to just play defense a lot. And I'm going to have to start changing I'm going to have to become less defensive and more offensive, especially with the white belt, I mean, I outweighed him a good 80 pounds, but I was,
smash him.
Yeah, but I want to try to technique it out, but he was just submitting me like crazy. But that's because he's had like really strong grips, and his resistance was very solid. And I was just like, because I've been working a lot, I didn't want to just go force on force, or have strong grips. I wanted to try to just defend myself around to let him make a mistake, to just keep setting up opportunities for him to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Not that I was setting up, not that I was like a chessboard was like intentionally creating a trap, but it's a white belt, so I take wrist locks off the table. I mean, they're not. You don't do wrist locks to white belt. There's a special place in hell for blue belts if they do that.
Depends what type of white belt it is. How are they rolling with you? Is this white belt throwing his forearm into my face and trying to knee me in the mouth?
Yeah. This was Valentine's. This was Friday, so was that Valentine's? Yeah. Let me step back and just before I'm going to add a little piece of trivia. Anytime there's a blizzard, I've already said this before. Anytime there's a blizzard, also anytime it's a major holiday, Henzo teaches class. I've found a little if you want to know when Henzo is there, look for him on Valentine's Day. That night, he gives all the instructors off. He teaches classes. It's you just know whenever Henzo's going to be in town. And so he was teaching class. There was a coral belt on the mats, 5 or 6 other black belts, but they weren't rolling. They were just rolling in like a corner. I think they were there working on some stuff. But I had this white belt just beating me up, and I'm going to share with you guys. At what point in your evolution did you stop just doing like where I'm at right now? Like, okay, I'm fed up with like defending all the time, and studying that. It's like right now I'm feeling like now's the time. I've got to turn that leaf. I got to turn the page and go. I really need to start working on aggression and offensive movements, and stop waiting for the other guy to make a mistake and start making the moves.
That's a weird question to answer for me personally, just because as soon as I started training, I kind of had like the wrong approach, quote unquote, the wrong approach to jiu-jitsu. I had the 10th planet approach. I had the submission only approach before anybody taught me the 10th planet approach or even the submission only approach. As soon as I started training jiu-jitsu, I had one goal. My goal was to submit the person. It was not to take the person down. It was not to pass the guard. It was not to get dominant position. It was not to do any of that. I just wanted to tap the guy. As quick as I could tap the guy, that was all I cared about. I didn't even really understand why passing the guard was really so important in the beginning. I was like, I don't get why passing the guard is so important. Like, why is it that big of a deal? Like, I really didn't even understand it at first. Just because I could submit people in the half guard, I could submit people in a bunch of different positions. I could be in bottom side control at the time and submit people. I was just doing a bunch of unorthodox things. So I was always trying to push the pace and jump on submissions since I was a white belt. So that's kind of a odd question for me to answer, but I did have I'll answer it like this. I did have a very, very defensive game, especially when I was rolling with somebody who was more technical than me or more strong than me, who was more athletic than me. If I was rolling with somebody who was more technical than me or more athletic than me, then I would go on the defense, and it was very difficult for me to get my offense off. And that changed for me once I got pretty much right after I got my blue belt, because right after I got my blue belt, I went and I competed at Naga at the expert division just because I had already won it in the intermediate division as a white belt. So once I got my blue belt, I competed in Naga at the expert division, and I had a match against a really, really tough purple belt who's now a black belt now. And I won't say his name, but I had a really, really tough match with him. He was a purple belt at the time. I was a blue belt at the time, and I submitted him. And then I had another tough match with another tough purple belt. I submitted him as a blue belt. He was a purple belt. And then I had match for the finals, and I got submitted in the finals match by another purple belt. And I went into his guard, and I got a little complacent, and I went on the defense, and I was like, he's not going to be able to do anything to me. I'm really, really good at full guard. This guy's going to try and play rubber guard on me, but he's not going to submit me in this rubber guard. And I will say this guy's name, just because he's like a phenom now. He's like a celebrity in the 10th planet system and in flow grappling and jiu-jitsu in general. I had a match back in the day with Jeremiah Vance. Jeremiah Vance is like one of our best black belts right now in the 10th planet system, and he's really, really, really good guy. And I had a match with him when he was a purple belt and I was a blue belt, and I was feeling good, and I did not think I was going to lose that match, and I lost that match. And after I lost that match, I was like, okay, I am no longer going into anybody's guards. I am no longer letting anybody work any offense on me. I need to go straight onto the offense, straight into my work, passing the guard, getting around. That's when I started caring about guard passing. That's when I started caring about getting into position and actually imposing my will instead of waiting for an opportunity. So it took me a loss at Naga at the expert level as soon as I got my blue belt to start really, really, really pushing to that next level where I was like, I don't care if this guy's better than me or more athletic than me or stronger than me. I'm going straight into my A game and imposing my will. That's kind of when it happened for me. When did it happen? What's your take on this, Frank? When did you ever have this feeling?
Yeah, it's a good conversation, because it's like you were saying, Jordan, it's relative. If I'm rolling with somebody that's a lot better than me, and especially when I was a younger belt, then I can expect to be on the defensive more, right? Now I'm working. And then if I'm with somebody who I'm a lot better with, then I'm usually working offensive. And I think you want both in a gym environment. So again, your instructor, I don't know how it works where you are, but how they pair up the athletes. If they just say, hey, rotate, pick a new partner, or some places where I've trained, it was like they would assign you that partner, right? And sometimes it's a really smart coach who knows what you need. Hey, I know Jordan needs work with this, so let me pair him up with this person. They're not just randomly doing it. Sometimes there's a lot of intention. Sometimes you might want people to say, hey, get a good mix. Today you might get some rolls in where you're more on the offensive, you're better. Some where your partners are better than you, you're on the defensive. Some where there's just more scrambles. When I used to work and do the MMA sparring sessions at Robert Drysdale's with some of the UFC fighters, some of the grappling and ground and pound sessions, and those were a lot more scrambling. I mean, I was literally training with guys that were Olympians, world champions in wrestling, and so they didn't want to play jiu-jitsu, right? They didn't want to get caught up in it. So they were just scramble,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be very frustrating. But I would think, hey, I've got to adapt. I mean, you've got to adapt to the fact that they're going to scramble and run. You've got to adapt that. So it's good to work consciously and intentionally. Work sometimes when you look around the room, if you have the choice, pick somebody where you could be on the defensive. But again, what's interesting is being defensive is relative, because some people are defensive and it's just like they're a turtle, right? They're the boring partner that you train with who's just only, they're just here and they're so tight the whole time. And their whole thing is they just don't want to get tapped. And that's not, it's like we say in the UFC or in MMA, are you intelligently defending, right? Intelligently defending in training would be where my main thing was to be technically proper, to try to advance. So even if you're out there, if you're a young, if you're a mid-level white belt or a blue belt or a purple belt, and even if you are working defensive, work defensive where you're still trying to get to dominant positions, not defensive where you're just running and hiding the whole fight and trying not to get tapped. There are times where you're just like, Roger Gracie might be mounting you and you're just like, oh my goodness, you're clock watching, one eye's on the clock and the other is just don't get tapped. Okay. There are times everybody has that. But if you're consistently that defensive person who's just turtling up and you're not actively trying to get to good positions or dominant positions, or you're not actively trying to reverse, that's not intelligently defending, and that's going to hurt someone's growth. If you're sitting there and you're in a bad spot and you're trying to get to your shrimp and you're trying to get a reversal, you're trying to get to a better position, you're trying to get to a dominant position, you're trying to get points on the board, that's intelligently defending. So I want to say one other thing here. What's interesting about this, I always said with boxing, if you look at UFC, and there were just some UFC fights last night, Noah, you can talk about those in a second, or at least the one you saw, you were texting me about it. But if you look in boxing, the part, most people, I mean, nobody likes to most people, if they've never been on a mat, they don't like to get choked. Most people don't like anybody, taking them down. And they're like the idea of somebody taking them down with a double leg blast or something, that's like, oh, that would be too physical. But the thing that most people fear the most, I mean, a head kick would be the worst, but what they fear the most in a regular combat sports environment will be a punch to the face. I mean, let's face it. If you give people a choice, say, look, how about either an arm bar or even a heel hook? People will prefer, I'm talking about the regular person. The regular person who doesn't know any better will be like, okay, do that leg lock thing. Even though the leg lock thing could be way more devastating, right? The arm bar could be way more devastating, right? I mean, a slam could be way more devastating. But the fact is that the person who doesn't know much about fighting, their worst fear is just, I don't want to get hit, right? And so even people that are experienced fighters, nobody likes to get, most people don't like to get hit. So my thing is, I think that in general, remember, I started with boxing. Boxing was my first love as a kid. I didn't train as much in it. We did train in like street boxing and backyard boxing, but I've been watching boxing since I was 8 years old. So I've been ringside for De La Hoya versus, for Roy Jones versus Antonio Tarver, and I've been to Floyd Mayweather versus De La Hoya, and on and on and on. I love boxing. And I think the biggest mistake I see in combat sports with the fighters is that they take young fighters and they throw them out there to be punched in the face, and they say, look, just get used to getting punched in the face, and then you'll figure that out. You'll be less afraid, and then you'll be fine. I actually think a better approach, it speaks to what you're talking about, Noah, a little bit. A better approach for me, for most young fighters, with the punching side of it, is teach them defense first, not offense. What they're doing is they're trying to teach these kids offense and just throwing them in the fire. I don't like that way of teaching most people. I believe that most people, if you took them and you taught them the defensive principles and the movement principles, and you taught them defense instead of just throwing them in the fire, they would get hit less. And so the idea would be you would hit, you teach them defense, you teach them foot movement, you teach them head movement, almost like Mr. Miyagi and Karate Kid. And like 6 months of that, they'd be like, well, when do I get to fight? When do I get to punch somebody? When does somebody get to punch me? But you're sitting there and you're driving in the defensive principles first. You're saying, hey, kid, I want to teach you how to not to be a human pinata, how to work your feet, how to slip punches, how to see punches. And little by little, I'm not going to ever hit you hard, but I'm just going to do this. And you're going to get used to me hitting you at 10%, at 20%, at 30%, 40%, day by day, week by week, month by month. Later, we'll put you in the fire, and we'll put you with like the Glass Joe, right? We'll put you with the person that's not very good and doesn't hit hard and won't hit you hard. And then we'll work your way up. If they taught people that way, defense first, and as slow and methodical as I'm talking about, a lot more people would feel more equipped to deal with being punched because they would have been shown the proper principles, the proper mechanics, the proper basics. They would have been drilled into them first. And I think a lot more people would be much more comfortable if they were being punched at, if they could be brought along slower rather than thrown into the fire, which is the way it's done 99 point whatever percent of the time. Great question, Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's, I've been using meditation techniques lately in the last 6 months to slow down time during my rolls. And that has enabled me to start thinking a lot more. I'm thinking a lot more. And what I mean is, it can happen so quickly. The roll, what's going on can happen so quickly. And you have, a lot of it's, muscle memory or to do this. And you don't really know why you're doing it, but you're doing a certain move subconsciously. You're moving in a certain way because you've drilled it that many times, or you've just intuitively know to roll that way. And I'm starting to I can start to notice more now that I use Sam Harris's Waking Up app as part of my regimen. You have your mental health hygiene. It's part of that's using meditation, and I'm seeing more times where I can sit objectively and say, why am I doing this? Why am I being more defensive? And why do I? I'm also noticing. I notice emotion. That's my whole jiu-jitsu practice after all these years is fresh to me once again.
Well, this is very important. The defense, if you're going to be defensive minded, right? If a student is going to be defensive minded, it's very important to know the intention behind it. If the intention is intelligence or, hey, I'm being technical, then be defensive when you need to be. If it's coming from an intelligence standpoint or technical. If it's just coming from fear, if it's coming from a fear place, that is really counterproductive for the combat sports athlete. A lot of people, their defensiveness is rooted in fear, and that is going to hinder their development.
Let me think about what you just said. A lot of defensiveness is rooted in fear. Okay, I want to speak to that because now we're getting into some of the subcategories, or we're breaking out this why I've enjoyed training defensively for a long time. And one of my things initially when I first started training, I was hesitant to get on the mat because I was afraid of getting hurt. It was everyone's afraid of getting hurt, and I own that fact that you get hurt along the way, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad to get hurt because your body comes back stronger, or you learn how to train while being hurt. So I set that issue aside now, and my thing, it's not so much fear anymore as it is. To me, I've been using it. I've been using it for a while as more of maybe as a crutch. Because maybe my offensive game isn't as strong as it should be. So there's an imbalance in my game. And I think right now that's where I'm at is I just need to work my offensive techniques more.
Sure.
And I think probably where you're at when you're in a blue belt stage where you start to grow out of, you start to, relearn jiu-jitsu again and your relationship with it. So I want to back up another step and talk about, in yoga, whenever you mentioned that yogis, they change their names and things like that. And I mentioned meditation, but also in yoga, when you do regular practice of yoga, it induces a lot of the amazing properties. I guess like what you were saying before we went on the podcast, we were talking about mushrooms. Um,
Cordyceps mushrooms.
is that's just an adaptogen, right?
Cordyceps mushrooms is supposedly supposed to give you a bunch of energy, and it's supposed to like help athletes
Yeah.
produce energy, and it's supposed to be very good before workouts and stuff like that.
And your ability and the benefits are they accrue. It improves over time.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I think there's like I think I've heard about this before on a podcast that they it's like some mountain goats or something eating them, and then the shepherds saw them eating, so they started using them in Peru and highlands. Yeah, so I'm familiar with that. But back to the other kind of mushrooms, the psychoactive mushrooms with DMT and some of the revelatory aspects you get from either a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, and I believe that when you start doing heavy Jiu Jitsu sparring, your body goes into your mind goes into a state of euphoria, and you start to change. How deep when you go really, really deep into your roles, and where you take your body physically to a level, your mind transforms, and you can start to see yourself objectively what you're doing more, instead of being subjectively, where you're so tied to your ego and to you being just about saving your life, or you're fearful of getting hurt, in other words, or your ego, you're so married to your ego. I know I'm throwing a lot of concepts together, but this is there's a nexus of there's an interrelation here between the effects that you get from yoga and what you do with meditation, but also in Jiu Jitsu you get that same effect, where you start to transcend yourself. You start to get out of just who you are and how you identify with yourself, to tie in with what your name is. When you talk about how you're so closely identified with yourself, and your name, but you change. When you go so deep, and this is such a transformative practice, Jiu-Jitsu is, it does change inside of you. So like for me, Jordan, you said, you're the nicest person I know. But in a few years' time, when I'm a brown belt, you will know the full extent of how mean I can be in a gi on the mat. You're like, wow, you're not so,
Capable and effective and nice are different things.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes.
I think if you became more capable, and even if you started smashing me on the mats, and you were just smashing me with all your weight, tapping me left and right, I'd still think you're a nice guy. That wouldn't stop you from doing it.
It would be very hard for me to smash you right now. I just because of our weight differences, but you have long legs. You'd probably put me in a triangle or one of your 10th planet techniques. But anyways, I went deep in our conversation there, and I did not articulate all those points that well. And so, as I think about these things more in the future,
that was a very esoteric monologue.
Yes, and I think I have to unpack it.
I don't know if every man was able to keep up with it.
That's okay. That's okay. I think I was talking more to myself there.
Every man and woman, because we got to make it clear that we might have to do something about that name. That we got every man. I don't know.
No, brother. We're gonna keep it Everyman BJJ. We don't have to appeal to the.
It's not that. No.
Politically correct.
I want to be all inclusive.
Time out. That let me walk this back so you know that there is a play that comes out of 18th. I 15th century Shakespearean playwrights. It's called Everyman. And so what is behind Everyman is it's a morality play. And in Everyman, it talks about how every man is we and you. And it talks about on your path, on your journey in life. That's what this play is about. The play is you have a journey in your life that you go through, and you have decisions that you make. That there are moral decisions. And every man meets people along the way, and they learn more about themselves. So, if you go to Wikipedia and look up every man, it fits into what sort of like what I just said too.
No, I didn't know about the Shakespeare because I thought that I had, and I could be confused, but I thought I had written something, and in that something I had mentioned every man, and then you seized on that, and you thought, well, that maybe that triggered your earlier concept of every man from the Shakespeare version, and then you saw me use it in the Jiu Jitsu context, and then you had your Shakespeare thing in some corner of your brain. You did like Reese's Pieces where you put chocolate and peanut butter together, and there you go.
Yeah. I'm sorry to take you guys on a deep into the abstract discussion there, or it wasn't a discussion. It was me just having mental masturbation there for a moment.
Oh, well. You can keep that to yourself, Mr. No Agreement.
Well, no, I see. I saw some themes there.
G-rated, family friendly. Hey, listen, I want to go back to something you said earlier because I would be remiss if I didn't say this about the defensive aspects of jiu-jitsu. I know some old school jiu-jitsu legends who I like and respect, who have told me, listen, Frank, the people that are defensive jiu-jitsu masters, they deserve as much credit as those that are offensive. And I've had multiple legends tell me this. And if you even remember a couple years ago, Andre Galbal, I think it was Metamoris, and he fought, what was it, Henner Gracie? It was one of the it was like one of Horion Gracie's kids. I think it might have been Henner.
Did you say little?
Yeah, who was it? Who did he face, Jordan? Who did Andre fight? It was one of the younger.
I can't remember off the top of my head. Henner might be right. It might have been Henner.
It might be Henner or what one. I apologize. We should know that 100%. It was a Metamoris match. Anyway, Galbal just destroyed him on the scoreboard, if there was a scoreboard, right? But it was one of those matches where it's like 20 minutes, kind of like Oilers rematch with Eddie Bravo, where it's submission only. And so even if somebody dominates somebody at the end, it's a draw, because in the old school, even, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, going back decades, it was like, look, if you don't submit somebody, like Jordan Wirth is just all about submitting. If you don't submit somebody, you didn't really beat them. You didn't really dominate them. So there are a lot of people, especially the old school people, that are like, listen, that's why they don't like time limits, right? I mean, a lot of people are like, they like kumites. They're like, look, you can't. There are a lot of people that will say, listen, you can't decide in 5 minutes just because somebody took somebody down, or 6 minutes, and say that their jiu-jitsu is better than someone, even if they beat somebody 8-0, 10-0, because it's like, well, wait, this other person might, if it was a 20-minute match or a 30-minute match, they might catch them. The person who's using all that energy to score all those points might get tired, right? The person that's taking Jordan down 5 times is spending energy, and maybe over a 20-minute period, if that person who's smoking Jordan on the takedowns, who's passing his guard left and right, but guess what? He's spending a lot of energy, and he gets tired, and eventually Jordan catches him. And so it's really like quantum physics. What are we measuring here? Some people, there's a sizable minority out there. I should say there is a minority out there, some of them very smart, who will say, listen, what an amazing defense, kind of like in soccer. There are some teams like the old Italian teams that have won the World Cup multiple times, and they're just defensive. The Italian teams traditionally, if they score 1 goal on you, they just shut it down. They go into that Azzurri defense, and they play defense, and they play slow ball, and they slow ball, or if you're really good offensively, if you're Brazil, they'll play slow ball the whole 90 minutes, make it go into overtime, and then beat you on penalty kicks, right?
Okay.
Even though you're much more spectacular, they're like, hey, these guys, they're too precise, they're too good, they're too finesse, they score too much. Let's just play defense. Let's not even really try to score very much. Let's just play defense and get to penalty kicks and steal the victory, basically. And there's a lot of old school jiu-jitsu people. It surprises me how many of them sort of defend that philosophy. We're like, hey, Frank, the guy got beat 20-0, but the other guy didn't submit him, and he wasn't tired. He was never threatened. And so it's really a draw. You have to. They would say you have to give credit to both guys because this
guy's not trying. Yeah. That's a major thing too. Especially if the guy that beats him 20-0 is not trying to submit him. It's like, what? Are you serious, dude? Because that happens all the time. That's what makes me mad when I see it, Frank. When the guy's going like, he's like ahead 20-0, and you can tell the only thing he's trying to do is rack up the points. He's not even trying to go for the sub because he knows he might get caught in a scramble. He's not even trying to submit the guy. He's only trying to rack up the points. That's when it really, really upsets me when I see these points players. It's one thing if the guy's like 10-0 and the guy's trying to submit him, or he's going for a submission attempt here and there. You know what I mean? He goes to side control, he tries to lock up a Kimura, and then he scrambles out, he ends up on the back. You know what I mean? If as long as he's attempting a submission, then that's one thing. But a lot of the time, these guys aren't even attempting the submission, Frank. They're only doing like straight point grappling. They're just going from position to position, trying to rack up the scoreboard.
So really what we are talking about is intention. We're talking about the intention.
That's there you go.
Yeah.
Or it's a tactic. Well, let me back up. So we got to go into what's the difference between strategy and tactics. Strategy, I'm waiting for you to make a mistake as a defensive player. Tactics are the individual, I might float my arm out away from my body a little bit so you'll reach out, and then I can do a reversal because you put your body weight over reaching for it. Jordan, you're giving me a very quizzical look.
I'm trying to.
I think you confuse.
I've always thought of what you're describing right now as strategy, but it also is tactics. And so I'm trying to figure out the difference between my own head between strategy and tactics.
So here's strategy is a foundational concept, whereas tactic is the individual detail. So a tactic.
I think of it as tactics are the execution of strategy, right? So tactics would be the execution of strategy.
Well, execution of what?
That's how it makes most sense to me too. Yeah.
So your strategy is to be, so like Jocko Willink in his, what's his book? What's that book called? Something ownership. Something. Extreme ownership. So extreme ownership is a strategy. Okay, but what does that mean day to day? And one of his tactics, let me say, there's also something in the middle there, okay? And those are objectives, okay? So you have strategy, objectives. So objective is, strategy is we want to... Well, let me back up. Oh, man. And I'm not...
Let's not worry about this because we're a little bit...
How are we doing on time?
Guys? I think we're coming up on our last 10, 15 minutes. But
okay.
More pertinently and more importantly, I think those are roughly the same word. You're holed up in New York City solving, whatever corporate money issues, tax issues, whatever you do. And so you're not able to train as much, Jordan. I mean, Noah, let's talk a little bit about, what's it like for you when you're not able to train? Is there guilt? Is there a lot of aggression, too much testosterone? Is there, does it affect your mood? Tell me about Noah when he doesn't get to train and he's holed up and he just works.
my sciatica has been keeping me up at night, waking me up. It's sitting so long.
Now tell people what that is. Tell people what
so
this is.
so yeah, I started experiencing this when I was in the Marine Corps. I had some kind of injury to my lower back, and essentially sciatica is a pinched nerve, or it has something to do with your nerves in your back, and you get various levels of pain shooting down to all the way down to your foot, and it travels and it moves in different places. And so you have to, because you were sitting so much, or for me, when I'm lying in bed, it really hurts. And I've been doing different movements to stretch muscles to take pressure off of my lower back. But actually, rolling Jiu Jitsu, initially after the first day, I'm sore all over. But if I'm back into where I'm moving and I'm training 4 or 5 times a week, it's not a problem. It feels great because I'm moving around. So
now, how often are you able to train now in this season?
Well, I've posted 66 hours last week, and I'm working 7 days a week, and where I'm in the office 9, leaving at midnight. Next to 1 day a week. I've hit the mats once. I hit the mats once last week, once the week prior, and this is Sunday afternoon. I've already worked 4.5 hours today, and I'll probably go back in the office after this podcast shortly. It's grueling. I'm doing financial statement audits of hedge funds, so the deadlines are on. You got to get the financial statements done. So it's crunch time. So what am I doing at work? Well, I'm actually exploring ways to do things at work with my breaks. So I monitor my breaks closely. My Apple Watch reminds me to get up every 10 minutes till the hour, 12 times a day. Mm-hmm. So I get up and I'm actually doing wheel on the wall. So that helps with back bends and my sciatica. I found that to be like a little secret. I have very limited flexibility reaching back like this. So I've been working on that a lot every hour when I can.
I always thought that every 240-pound guy could just easily scratch his back. I just always expect that.
Well,
I don't know how much you actually weigh, by the way, no, but
I'm actually, I've actually been, I've been doing a slightly modified carnivore diet just to drive you nuts for a second. I haven't heard what you said.
Did you see my video?
I saw, but I did not. I did not listen to it. I have not listened to it, but I haven't been going. What I've been doing mostly is I just eat once a day.
Let me just say really quick, you can go on my Facebook channel, Frank Forza. You can go on my Instagram doesn't have it because my YouTube channel has that. It's like a 30-minute video on carnivore diet because Joe Rogan's losing all that weight, whatever. Let me just say that synopsis. Most people's diets are so crappy and so bad that yes, just eating only meat would limit the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, glyphosate, and everything else. So it's not that carnivore diet is so phenomenal for people. In my mind, it's just that people's diets are so crappy that only eating meat would be an improvement over what they're currently eating with all the carbs and the herbicide, fungicide, insecticide, genetically modified glyphosate, etc. That's my take.
I need to just counter. It's not countering, but just to weigh in. What I've been doing, so when I'm working so much, what can I do? Is what is in my control? What can I do if I'm working so much? And so I set myself upon to practice an elimination diet, which is what Jordan Peterson's daughter
She's not inventing. She's not. That's that. There's. They can call it whatever they want. People have been doing that forever. That's just some fancy name. They didn't invent
Okay.
it. That's not new.
Yeah.
That's been around forever.
Yes. So I'm just
we
saying.
call it that, but it's been that's common. It's also called common sense,
So
as opposed to elimination diet.
I'm just saying that in listening to her appearance on his show, I listened to it and I thought, I hadn't thought about elimination diet, and so that's what my takeaway from listening to her speaking is just to do elimination and just like let me just pare back. And what I found
AKA
is
common sense, Noah. Come on, common sense, brother.
sure.
Don't touch the hot stove. Don't touch a hot stove. It'll burn you. It'll burn you. I mean, it's
yeah. So I just, you ask what do I do, and I've, just try to get up regularly, I stretch and drink a lot of water, and I focus on my diet more. That's one thing I control. So I've been practicing eating a lot more protein, and some of my clothes they're kind of loose on me now. So I'm looking forward to training, lifting weights again, and doing Jiu Jitsu and my yoga practice to see how it goes from there.
Right.
So yeah, the pressure's gonna come off real soon. I've already hit the top of it, and so now I think it's gonna come down. Now my big efforts is I didn't do a lot of stress eating this time, which was a huge accomplishment for me. But so anyways, elimination diet. I just said, all right, this time I'm going to not soothe myself with food. And I found that eating more protein caused me to have less cravings, and I had more mental clarity.
Again, if people are eating, and I'm not singling you out here, no, but if people are eating junk, it's like if somebody does no push-ups and then they do 20 and they're like, my God, I'm doing 20 push-ups, and they're patting themselves in the back, and I'm looking at them like, that's not a lot of push-ups, right? Like, so somebody can tell me, I feel better than I've ever felt. And I'm like, well, yeah, they don't know what they don't know. They feel better than they felt because they were eating complete junk.
Yeah.
And yes, so they moved up a notch, right? They moved up a notch or 2 notches. That doesn't make something the holy grail of health. Just because someone tells me, like, look, if somebody was doing 0 push-ups and they're doing 20 after a month or 2 months, and those 20 push-ups are really hard for them, I would be the first one to be like, dude, hooray.
Welcome to the honeymoon period.
Right? Yeah, improvement. But if they're looking at me and they're patting themselves in the back like, dude, my 20 push-ups are just the most incredible thing ever, and I'm like, dude, that's nothing. Like, that's baby stuff. So my thing with carnivore or anything is, what's the sustainability? How long is someone going to sustain that? Where's the pyramid? Where's the hierarchy? And just when you really immerse yourself, by the way, we're all babies at the nutrition, and nutrition science is less than 100 years old. The human body is amazing and immaculate. You've got trillions of cells. There's so many different chemical responses. I mean, so everybody, even the smartest people that any of us can find, are babies at it. Okay, we're all babies. The smartest people are babies at it. But I can just tell you, with good intentions, I'm not in the dogma. I'm open-minded. I think for 99% plus long-term, that is a bad idea. I don't think it's a holy grail. I don't think it's top of the pyramid. It doesn't surprise me that somebody like Joe, who's a good guy, really good guy, it doesn't surprise me he would lose 12 pounds. It doesn't surprise me that autoimmune would clear up, because, again, people are taking in so many pollutants and toxic and chemicals every day from their food. People are worried about, think about this, people are worried about, climate change and all these other things that we should worry about, the environment. I love the environment, but they don't think word one about all the crap that they're drinking and eating in and what's really in their food. And they'll sit here and worry about the boogeyman or the coronavirus or things that are unlikely to happen to them, right? Things that are far away. They'll obsess over that and terrify themselves over that. And yet they won't blink twice about drinking something or eating something that has 70 chemicals that they can't pronounce, that they don't know in what combination, what do those chemicals do, that the FDA hasn't exhaustively tested all those chemicals. They don't know what that does in a human body or their particular human body, and they'll be terrified of, oh, Y2K. Y2K is coming. I'm terrified.
I didn't know you were going there.
Coronavirus is coming, and that's gonna wipe us all out and whatever. And it's like, bro, right in front of you, you have the power to decide what goes into your body, how pristine it is. So anyway, don't get me, this is my rabbit hole. But my point is,
this is my rabbit hole.
Listen, you're seeing good results. Listen, Noah, you're seeing. I like Joe Rogan. This carnivore diet, whether anybody likes it or not, is going to be huge. It's going to be where once Joe Rogan put his stamp on it, once he shot that video, this thing is going to be a $100 million, $200 million industry for the next year or two, right? It's going to be the next keto diet. So somebody's going to make a lot of money. I'm just saying, is it the holy grail of health? Is it a really good idea? Is it sustainable? I'm going to say that in my studying, I'm going to conjecture that 99.9% are going to be like, wake up one day and it's a bad idea. Short term, my buddy Noah Green is feeling better. He has less brain fog. He's going to lose some weight. You're believing in it. It's got you in the placebo element too. You're eating less gook. Hallelujah, man.
I don't eat much gook to begin with. I'm not that. I don't eat processed foods.
I love you too, by the way. So anyway, we're pretty much out of time, gentlemen. Is there any final thoughts, Jordan? And any final thoughts as we wrap up episode 8 of Everyman BJJ? I'm going to take that as a no. But by the way, are you trying to grow your hair out because your hair looks the same length as it did? I mean, I thought your hair would grow faster. You're like 21 years old. Your hair should be, like Chia Pet. I thought you were going to be like a Chia Pet. Those Chia Pets, boom. Chia Pet grows in like 2 weeks. It's everything.
I don't know what I'm doing with my hair, man. I really want to grow it back out, but I've been told that I look more professional with it short, and Coach Casey likes it short, and I'm trying to get a job teaching. I'm trying to become one of the head coaches there, so I don't know, man. I guess we'll see what happens.
I like it. I mean, hey,
Yeah, I liked it better longer.
I like it longer.
Yeah.
My vote's where your hair is.
If you're in a rock band, then you got to grow it out if you do the rock band. If you do that. But Noah Green, Mean Green, is there any final thoughts for you?
Big Mean Green says, if you got hair on top of your head, don't be like me where you have to shave. If you got to shave it, grow it here. All right? But don't do both. That's a little too much Wookiee.
Too much Wookiee?
So my final thoughts, I just want to thank everybody, the 10 people or whatever we have right now that are loyal to us, that do watch, and the one person who might watch to the end, the whole actual hour and a half. Thanks so much for watching. We're just trying to come from a good space. We're going to get better. And we invite any questions out there, any topics you think we should talk about, even criticism. I personally, from my days as a journalist, I don't mind if people criticize us. I mean, as long as they're coming from a pure space and they're coming from a respectful space or good intentions, I don't mind the criticism. It can make us better. And it means that people watch. It means that they care. I was listening to that the other day about like the Philadelphia fans, they're booing. So, NBA, they're booing some of their star players, and they're really hard, rough fans, right? Philly fans are notoriously, but they do. They, as one of the ESPN commentators was saying, they really do. It means they care. It means they're engaged. So same thing here. I've always felt that way. As long as people are coming from a good space, you got some criticism, you got, you want us to talk about something. The email for us is everymanbjj@gmail.com. Is that correct, Noah?
That's perfect.
That's correct. This is the end of episode 8, Everyman BJJ. We hope everybody out there has a great day, and thanks again for watching.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, take care. Bye.
See you later.
Bye, guys.